Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a stack of sources, articles, research, all our notes, and we really try to distill them down into the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today we're embarking on what feels like a truly intricate and honestly profoundly personal journey.
Yeah.
It's a deep dive into the echoes of a childhood shaped by narcissistic parents.
It's a heavy topic. It's so important.
Exactly. And our goal is to understand how those really profound early experiences don't just affect someone superficially, but can fundamentally alter an individual's entire operating system,
That's a great way to put it.
operating system.
Yeah, shaping their perceptions, their relationships, their whole path forward in life.
Precisely. Our mission for this deep dive really is to unravel the precise mechanisms. How early family interactions specifically, as our sources detail, this dynamic between a narcissistic father and a covert narcissistic mother can sculpt a person's development.
Sculpt is a good word for it. It really is, because this sculpting often leads to adopting these unique coping mechanisms, strategies that, well, they strikingly resemble patterns we commonly associate with ADHD.
Okay, that's a key connection we'll explore.
Absolutely. We aim to extract crucial insights into how this impacts not just self-perception, but the very fabric of one's relationships, and ultimately how you can embrace and maybe even leverage your own unique inner architecture.
Okay, and to guide us through this, often challenging yet I think incredibly illuminating material, we're drawing from some key sources. We have a child's eye view of a narcissistic family. There's a Hungarian text apparently provides a really raw first-hand account of growing up like that.
Yes, incredibly valuable perspective.
And we're also diving into texts titled ADHD and Narcissism, which meticulously bridge that gap between these early life events and the behavioral patterns we see later.
Right, connecting the dots.
And crucially, we'll be weaving in some timeless insights from Popper Peter, the Book of Inner Paths, which sounds like a profound exploration of self-understanding and personal growth.
A classic, yes. Very helpful for the what now aspect.
Exactly. So with that framework in mind, let's start where it all began. The child's raw perspective within that narcissistic family environment. So we're jumping right into the heart of the personal narrative here. The sources reveal a scenario that's, gosh, it's not just heartbreaking, it's truly disturbing when you think about the implications.
It really is.
A child, as young as 5 or 6 years old, being forced to answer this impossible question.
Not just any question.
No, not what's your favorite color or anything innocent like that. It was, which of us do you love more?
Just hearing it makes you wince.
Right. This isn't a question any child should ever have to grapple with, let alone be, held accountable for their answer.
And that's exactly the critical point here. This wasn't some innocent inquiry, not born from a desire for emotional connection or even just playful banter between the parents.
No, it sounds much darker.
It was. As the source vividly describes, this question, posed to a child that young, 5 or 6, was explicitly a tool for the parents to decide their own arguments.
Wow. Okay, wait. So the child's answer was used to settle their fights.
Yes. Imagine the sheer, raw, emotional weight on a young child's shoulders, being forced to mediate adult conflict, to essentially pick a side, not based on their own feelings, but to serve as a tiebreaker in a parental dispute.
Well, this is weaponizing the child's affection.
Completely. And then the child was blamed if they couldn't give an answer, essentially being held responsible for the parents' inability to resolve their own issues.
So damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Exactly. This is just a profound, chilling example of childhood invalidation. The child's genuine feelings, their innocence, their emotional capacity, totally secondary. Their very being is reduced to a utility for the parent's self-serving needs. And this deeply traumatic experience, it immediately sets the stage for a lifelong struggle with self-worth. It makes the child constantly search for external validation because their earliest attempts at emotional honesty, at just being a kid, were met not with understanding, but with blame and parental frustration.
It's like a foundational wound.
It absolutely is. A foundational wound that basically says, your feelings don't matter, only your utility to our conflict does.
And that impact just ripples out, doesn't it? Because the source shares this really astonishing detail. I didn't see them fight until I was 16. But then almost immediately, it clarifies. They didn't fight. In fact, they fought.
Ah, the paradox.
Yeah. It's not a contradiction, is it?
Mhm.
It sounds like a harrowing window into the child's desperate coping mechanism.
Exactly. It highlights this pervasive pattern of hidden, covert conflict within the home, like a silent psychological war
Yeah.
that was maybe far more insidious than overt screaming matches would have
So
been.
because you can't even point to it easily.
Yeah, precisely. This dynamic is a classic hallmark of covert narcissism. You see, the grandiosity isn't expressed through, overt boasting or loud demands for attention.
Right.
It's veiled, it's hidden beneath layers of defensiveness, often because there is this deep-seated fear of exposure or shame.
Okay.
So the child in that kind of environment develops this incredibly intense, almost preternatural radar for conflict, even if it's unspoken.
Like you just feel it.
They can feel it. The air itself is thick with tension, and the source describes this really unique coping strategy to manage this pervasive, invisible conflict. I actually found myself inventing myself and excluding them, their mother.
Inventing myself. What does that mean?
It sounds like creating an internal world, a persona almost, to retreat into. And then there's this, and a buzzing with this, so to speak, to turn off that argument.
A buzzing, like internal noise.
Yeah, this self-created acoustic bubble. It's an early and profound form of maybe dissociation or just internal escape. It points to a hypervigilance so intense that the child system is constantly scanning for the most subtle cues of threat, a shift in tone, a tightening jaw, a silent stare.
Wow.
This hyper-awareness is articulated so perfectly. I can spot from afar if someone is fighting or arguing or has a really threatening tone. I already know when it will end or where the argument is going.
That's an incredible skill born from trauma.
It is, and this early involuntary adaptation directly foreshadows the development of what we're calling this anomalous operating system. Essentially, the brain literally wires itself differently, optimizing for survival within chronic stress.
So it results in things like heightened sensory perception.
Exactly, and that constant need for self-created acoustic bubbles just to maintain some semblance of internal regulation, they basically built a fortress inside their own mind.
So their entire internal system got fundamentally rewired just to manage the impossible. And this extended into other areas too, like having to grow up quite early.
Yeah. Yes, the parentification piece.
The sources paint this stark picture of role reversal, noting that from age 12 until age 18, after the parents divorced, this child became the only one in the family who constantly spent time with their mother, joining her for breakfast and lunch every day. This wasn't, about cozy bonding time, was it? It sounds like it was about filling a deep parental void.
It's a textbook example of parentification. The child is effectively forced to assume emotional, sometimes even practical, responsibilities that just far exceed their developmental stage.
They become the parent support system.
Precisely. They become the primary emotional support for the parent, sacrificing their own childhood development in the process. They miss out on crucial things, play, exploration, the secure attachment needed to form a stable sense of self.
And even their own big moments got overshadowed.
Tragically, yes. Even significant personal milestones, moments that should have been solely about their achievements, became overshadowed by the parents' needs and their ongoing conflicts. The source painfully recalls that when they took responsibility for their first employee at age 18, which is a huge step for any young adult.
Huge step, yeah.
It led to the biggest encounter that they immediately fought in front of me and the whole family.
Oh my gosh, in front of everyone.
Yes. And maybe most poignantly, a graduation ceremony, a monumental celebration of the child's hard work, their future. It became actually about them both. Then everything was about them. They couldn't let things go.
So the focus gets pulled right back to the parents.
Every single time, it reinforces this pervasive, suffocating pattern of the parents' profound self-centeredness, their inability to genuinely see or celebrate their child's individual identity, and their constant need to draw attention back to themselves, even at the child's expense.
The message is just brutal.
It is. The message was clear. Your life, your achievements are merely backdrops for our drama.
So the constant insidious message, whether it was subtle or overt, was always, I wasn't good enough.
That core belief.
And here's where the normalization of this experience becomes truly chilling for me. The source says the child never mentioned any burden or difficulty because I don't know what it would be like if they didn't behave like that.
They had no other frame of reference.
Exactly. They didn't even have a conceptual framework for what a different, healthier reality could possibly look like.
And this speaks to a really deep-seated imposter syndrome and just the profound normalization of that parental narcissistic behavior. The child adapted, they had to a severe and chronic lack of genuine connection and reciprocity.
They learn to operate in an emotional vacuum.
That's a perfect description. They learn not to express their own needs or burdens because, well, there was no precedent for those needs being met or even acknowledged.
Right.
The individual states they never asked for accountability, which is totally understandable given their history, yet they also never got any feeling of togetherness or at least minimally similar gestures in return.
So there was this complete emotional imbalance.
Total imbalance.
Yeah.
The parents expected the child to bear significant emotional weight, to be their confidant, their mediator, their emotional punching bag, sometimes without offering any real connection, validation, or emotional intimacy back.
Wow.
It created this psychological landscape just devoid of genuine mirroring or reciprocal support, which leads to that profound absence of a sense of belonging.
And that feeling.
That constant internalized feeling of not good enough, it became a core belief, deeply impacting their psychological development and absolutely setting the stage for the adaptive ADHD-like patterns we're going to explore. It's this fundamental disconnect between their inner world and what was required just to survive externally.
Okay, so to really unpack these childhood experiences
Yeah.
and crucially connect them to the adult manifestations, we need to zoom out a bit, right? And look at this spectrum of narcissism itself.
Yes, understanding the framework is key.
The sources clarify that it's not just one single monolithic personality trait. It's complex. It's a spectrum with two main distinct types. Grandiose, which is often the overt kind we think of.
Right, the more obvious type.
And then vulnerable, which is frequently covert, hidden.
That's a crucial distinction, absolutely. And understanding it really helps us interpret the specific family dynamics described in the source material.
Okay.
So the grandiose narcissist, that's the one who openly seeks attention, admiration, dominance. They often appear supremely confident, almost invulnerable, emotionally resilient, at least on the surface.
The stereotypical loud, arrogant person demanding the spotlight.
Pretty much. But the vulnerable or covert type operates very differently. Their primary focus is on avoiding shame and humiliation. Those feelings are deeply terrifying for them.
Okay, so it's driven by avoidance.
Largely, yes. Consequently, their behavior is much more hidden, defensive. It's characterized by chronic insecurity and this underlying sense of inadequacy. But they often manifest their grandiosity in subtle, indirect, maybe passive-aggressive ways.
Ah, okay.
And the family dynamics we just explored, with a narcissistic father likely exhibiting more of those overt, demanding aspects, and then a covert narcissistic mother embodying the hidden manipulations, it perfectly exemplifies this spectrum.
So the child was dealing with both ends of it.
A dual assault, essentially, of different yet equally damaging narcissistic styles.
And it's not like individuals are rigidly stuck in one type or the other, right? The sources highlight this dynamic nature of grandiosity.
Yes, that's a really important point. Narcissistic individuals actually fluctuate between these grandiose and vulnerable states depending on the situation, their stress levels, whether they feel challenged.
There's not a fixed identity.
No, it's more like a fragile, ever-shifting defense mechanism. It's a brilliant and often misunderstood insight, actually. Grandiosity is described in the sources as a fragile, defensive mechanism, a kind of armor.
An armor.
Designed to cover deeper, more fundamental vulnerability. This armor isn't some solid, impenetrable shell. It's a meticulously constructed facade. It's meant to protect a much more profound sense of inadequacy and insecurity that lies beneath.
Right.
And here's the key. When that armor is threatened, when their self-image is challenged, or when they don't get the external validation they crave, that underlying vulnerability becomes excruciatingly visible.
Okay. That makes sense.
And this helps us understand why the parents in the narrative might have outwardly appeared not to fight, but engaged in those deeply damaging, covert battles behind the scenes, often using the child as a pawn.
Right, because direct conflict might crack the armor.
Exactly. Their fighting was likely an expression of their underlying wounded vulnerability when their grandiosity felt threatened. And this manifested not as direct confrontation, but through blame, manipulation, the silent treatment, emotional withdrawal.
All those indirect methods.
Yes, all indirect methods to restore their fragile sense of control and superiority. It's this continuous, often unconscious dance between projecting strength and desperately hiding profound insecurity.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper then into the internal world of that vulnerable or covert narcissistic mother figure, especially given her pervasive influence on the child's early life that we heard about.
Yes, understanding her internal landscape is crucial.
The sources detail a really specific set of characteristics that are, well, they're deeply telling. They help explain her behavior.
Indeed. A vulnerable narcissist is fundamentally characterized by what's called a fragile and contingent self-esteem.
Contingent, meaning dependent on.
Dependent almost entirely on external feedback. Their self-worth isn't nourished from a stable internal source. Instead, it depends almost entirely on feedback from the external environment.
So they're constantly scanning for approval.
Constantly scanning, incredibly dependent on external validation. Their internal world, as the sources emphasize, is often dominated by shame and envy.
Shame and envy. Okay.
Shame being that paralyzing, insidious feeling of, I am fundamentally bad or flawed, while envy involves experiencing others' successes or happiness as somehow their own personal failures or injustices.
Ouch.
Yeah. And to compensate for this profound internal low self-esteem and to manage that shame, they often build up a hidden, grandiose fantasy world.
A secret world.
A secret world where they are special, uniquely talented, brilliant, even if they never outwardly display it. They hold on to these secret fantasies like a shield.
Okay.
And crucially, they experience what's known as extreme sensitivity to criticism and rejection, often manifesting as rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD.
Wow, RSD. The idea that even a tiny criticism or perceived rejection causes physical pain as if I've been punched in the stomach,
Yeah.
that's incredibly intense.
It's visceral. It's not just hurt feelings.
And connecting this back to the child's early experiences, especially with the mother, it explains so much, doesn't
It
it?
really does.
Her likely internal struggles with shame and envy could easily explain her needing the child to pick a favorite, to choose between the parents.
Absolutely. She wasn't seeking true connection. She was desperately seeking external validation for her own precarious position in that marital conflict, trying to shore up her fragile self-esteem through the child's loyalty.
And her inability to let the child's graduation be about them.
Stems directly from that fragile, contingent self-esteem and her hidden, grandiose fantasies. Any external focus that wasn't primarily on her would threaten her internal fantasy world and trigger that extreme sensitivity to criticism or perceived slight.
Which is why the child felt constantly overlooked.
And ultimately, not good enough. Their existence was largely there to serve the parents' internal, unexpressed needs for validation and control.
So if that's the internal landscape, that fragile self-esteem, the shame, the envy,
Yeah.
how does that translate into the observable behaviors? How did it impact the mother's daily interactions with the child in ways that left such a deep mark?
Right, the external manifestations. Because of that deep fear of exposure and humiliation, vulnerable narcissists are often quite introverted and inhibited. They avoid direct attention, often appear reserved or shy.
But that doesn't mean they're harmless.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Don't mistake that for kindness. Crucially, they are often masters of passive-aggressive communication.
Ah, the subtle stuff.
Exactly. Think about the ways this plays out. The silent treatment that weaponizes absence, sarcastic remarks thinly veiled as jokes, chronic procrastination that subtly sabotages plans or punishes others, or gossip that indirectly undermines people.
All indirect ways to exert control or express anger.
Precisely. Without overt confrontation, they also very frequently employ a victim mentality, in Hungarian áldozati mentalitas, as a powerful manipulative tool.
Playing the victim.
Yes. By positioning themselves as perpetual victims, they gain attention, they deflect any responsibility for their actions, and they exert control over others through guilt and empathy.
And that fits with the child's narrative of the parents constantly asking them for accountability.
While never offering it back. Yes, it aligns perfectly.
And from a neurobiological perspective, the sources actually delve into why this empathetic deficiency is so central to narcissism. It's not just a choice they're making, is it?
Not entirely, no. It seems to be linked to reduced activity in the brain's salience network, specifically areas like the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex.
Okay, the salience network. What does that do for us normally?
Think of it as your brain's internal alarm system and spotlight. It's responsible for noticing and processing important information, especially emotional cues from others. Things like facial expressions, tone of voice, body language that signal someone else's emotional state.
So it helps us tune in.
Exactly. And when activity in this network is reduced, it literally hinders their ability to attune to others' emotional states. Instead of naturally engaging with another person's feelings, their brain is constantly activating what's called the default network,
The default network.
which is primarily focused on their own internal thoughts. Self-referential processing, daydreaming. It's like their internal spotlight is always shining inwards, making it harder to shift focus outwards onto others' experiences.
So, the mother's subtle manipulations, her constant need for accountability from the child, and that striking narrative of the child, creating that internal buzzing to turn off arguments,
Hmm.
it all resonates deeply with these behaviors in this neurological basis.
It really does. The parents' profound inability to truly connect or provide that feeling of togetherness directly relates to this empathy deficiency. It makes genuine emotional responsiveness incredibly difficult, almost impossible for them,
Which tragically explains why the child felt not good enough.
and never received those minimally similar gestures of togetherness because their parents were, in a very real neurological and behavioral sense, wired for self-focus. They were often incapable of consistent, authentic emotional reciprocity.
Okay, so given these pervasive and, frankly, damaging parental dynamics, it's tragically no surprise that the child experienced profound childhood invalidation.
It's almost inevitable in such an environment.
The sources define this as caregivers consistently ignoring, belittling, or punishing a child's authentic internal experiences, their feelings, their thoughts, their needs.
Yeah. Basically saying, what you feel doesn't matter, or it's wrong.
And this, we learn, forces the child to turn away from their true authentic self and construct what's known as a false self.
That's precisely it, and it's a critical concept for understanding the long-term impact. This formation of a false self becomes fertile ground. Not necessarily for the child developing narcissism themselves, so that can happen,
Right.
but more commonly for developing a particular highly adaptive brain wiring. It's directly linked to the failure of proper mirroring,
Mirroring.
that essential empathic reflection of a child's emotions and experiences, where a parent validates what the child is feeling by reflecting it back to them, like saying, oh, you seem really sad right now.
Okay, so the child feels seen and understood.
Exactly. And it's also linked to the lack of idealization. Having a stable, idealized parent figure to look up to, someone who embodies safety and wisdom.
And the narrative we've been dissecting perfectly exemplifies this profound invalidation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Being forced to choose between parents, being blamed for their inability to mediate adult conflict, having a significant personal milestone like graduation completely taken over by parental drama, and that pervasive internalized feeling of not good enough.
All potent forms of invalidation.
They chip away at the child's inherent worth. And the parents' profound lack of genuine mirroring, evidenced by the child's observation that they never got any feeling of togetherness or at least minimally similar gestures, denied the child the fundamental building blocks of a stable internal self-worth.
So they were always reacting.
Always reacting to external demands, navigating an unstable environment, rather than developing a core, secure sense of who they were meant to be. This false self became their survival mechanism. It was a way to navigate a world that didn't validate their authentic self.
And all this chronic stress, this constant invalidation and emotional neglect,
Wow.
it quite literally rewires the nervous system,
Yes, the neurobiological impact is real.
contributing to patterns that strikingly resemble ADHD. This is where the childhood experiences really start to connect directly with what we see later in the individual's adult anomalous operating system.
Absolutely. A toxic family environment, especially one dominated by an active, overt narcissistic father and a subtle, passive-aggressive, covert narcissistic mother. It subtly but powerfully teaches children a devastating lesson.
Which is?
That their own feelings and needs are secondary, maybe even irrelevant. That to survive, to gain any semblance of power or peace, they learn they must suppress their inner world, their true thoughts and emotions.
Which leads to that feeling of invisibility you mentioned.
Exactly. This often culminates in a profound and isolating sense of invisibility, where their authentic self feels unseen and unheard. And the sources are quite explicit and, I think, compassionate here. Chronic stress literally rewires the nervous system. It alters brain chemistry, it changes neural pathways.
Wow.
This contributes directly to patterns like hypervigilance, that constant scanning for threats we heard about, fragmented attention, and impulsivity, all hallmarks of what looks, on the surface, like ADHD.
But it's crucial to understand why.
It is. And this is a critical point for our listener, one that we really cannot emphasize enough. This isn't a flaw. It does not mean that something is wrong with you.
Right. It's an adaptation.
It's a testament to your resilience. Your organism and brain tried to adapt to an extremely stressful situation. Your brain did exactly what it needed to do to keep you safe and functioning in an unsafe environment. And in many cases, these powerful adaptive patterns persist even when the immediate danger has passed.
So the child's self-created buzzing to turn off arguments,
Yeah.
their early, almost preternatural ability to sense a threatening tone from afar and predict how an argument would end, and that constant need to invent myself, to mentally exclude their parents, these are direct, tangible manifestations of that hypervigilance and a fragmented inner world struggling to find peace.
Absolutely. Clear examples.
And the lasting feeling of not good enough, never mentioning any burden or difficulty to their parents because they didn't even know what a different reality would be like. That completely illustrates that suppression of the inner world and a deep-seated sense of invisibility.
Yes. It's a survival mechanism that, while incredibly effective in the moment, creates these long-term, deeply ingrained, anomalous ways of operating in the world, sometimes at great personal cost later on. ###VV. The anomalous operating system, AOS, in adulthood.
Okay, so let's call it the anomalous operating system, the AOS, because it perfectly captures how the brain adapts to such an intense and chaotic childhood, often manifesting in adulthood as patterns that look a lot like ADHD.
It's a fitting term, I think. It acknowledges the uniqueness and the adaptive nature.
And one of the most striking cognitive manifestations of this AOS is how it impacts basic brain functions, particularly attention and memory. The sources describe the ADHD-like brain as being like a browser with 100 tabs open, all playing music, and I don't know which one I should close.
Slight chuckle. It's a vivid, relatable, and remarkably accurate metaphor for that internal experience. Constant mental noise.
Right, and this brain struggles significantly with working memory, often experiencing it as if a thought is like a soap bubble. If I don't catch it or write it down immediately, it pops forever.
Oh, the frustration of that. Constantly losing your train of thought or forgetting what you were just about to do or say.
Yeah, and information is also often processed, like in the background, kind of subliminal multitasking.
Yes, making it hard to access on demand when you need to retrieve it for a specific task. It's in there somewhere, but you can't always grab it.
And knowledge often becomes highly context-bound, which leads to things like contextual amnesia.
Ah, yes. Where simply changing rooms can literally wipe your short-term memory of your original intention. You walk into the kitchen, stand there, and think, now, why did I come in here?
Happens all the time.
Chuckles. Exactly. Now, while this non-linear divergent thinking can actually be a superpower,
How so?
well, it can lead to incredible creative insights. Seeing connections between disparate things that others might miss. It's a true strength, often born from that childhood hypervigilance.
Okay, so there's an upside.
Definitely. But it simultaneously creates significant communication difficulties. The process of speaking for someone with this AOS becomes this attempt to compress this three-dimensional chaotic cloud of ideas into a one-dimensional linear sentence.
Like translating a complex image into a single line of text.
Precisely, resulting in significant data loss or potential misunderstanding along the way. That childhood buzzing and constant radar for conflict likely predisposed the brain to this multi-tab, always-on processing style, always scanning for threats or new information.
Which makes focused, linear thought a constant, deliberate challenge in adulthood.
A real challenge, yes.
And these adaptations, they extend far beyond just cognitive processing, right?
Yeah.
They deeply influence things like motivational paradoxes and task management.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources describe motivation for someone with this AOS as being driven by only two motivational forces, panic and passion.
That's a powerful dichotomy, isn't it? It highlights a fundamental difference in how motivation is engaged or accessed.
So not just steady effort.
Rarely. There's often an extremely high activation energy needed just to start tasks. Many people with this operating system struggle intensely with what's aptly called the wall of awful.
The wall of awful. Tell me more.
It's this metaphorical wall built from bricks of past failures, the present boredom associated with the task itself, and the paralyzing fear of future failure.
Wow, that's a heavy wall.
It is. And this profound internal barrier often leads to behaviors like productive procrastination.
I know that one. Doing everything except the important thing.
Exactly. Instead of tackling crucial, high-priority tasks, you find yourself completing less important but immediately gratifying activities that offer a quick success fix, like cleaning your entire house from top to bottom instead of writing that critical report.
Guilty. It's that immediate hit of accomplishment, right?
Right.
Even if it's for something less important.
Precisely. You also see phenomena like online basket euphoria.
Okay, what's that?
The dopamine hit comes not from the actual purchase, but from the act of researching, comparing, adding items to the online cart. The interest often just evaporates the moment the package arrives.
Huh. So the hunt is better than the catch.
In a way, yes. Then there's hyperfocus, or sometimes called hyperfixation, where an intense, almost obsessive focus on a hobby or interest can suddenly appear,
Yeah.
and then just as suddenly, without warning, completely evaporate, leaving behind what some have called a cemetery of better selves, a graveyard of forgotten equipment and abandoned passions.
Oh dear, the expensive hobby equipment used twice.
Chuckles. Exactly that. It isn't a lack of commitment necessarily, but a brain that, once it masters a challenge or gets that initial dopamine hit, struggles to sustain engagement without constant novelty. Perhaps a pattern born from constantly shifting demands and unpredictable environments in childhood.
That makes sense. And finally,
Kinetic inconsistency, or what's sometimes known as the all or nothing or tornado mode principle, where long periods of stillness or complete inactivity are punctuated by sudden, explosive bursts of seemingly undirected activity, like reorganizing an entire apartment in 90 minutes out of the blue.
right, 0 to 60 or 0 to reorganizing the entire linen closet.
Pretty much.
Okay, so looking back at the childhood, that constant pressure to be good enough, coupled with the parents' lack of genuine accountability or any consistent structure, that could absolutely contribute to that procrastination and the wall of awful, couldn't it?
Absolutely. The fear of failure becomes so overwhelming it leads to complete paralysis.
And those sudden bursts of activity, tornado mode.
They could very well be a manifestation of all that intense, suppressed energy from childhood, finally released in a chaotic but often incredibly productive manner when the right stimulus, or perhaps panic, hits.
It all connects back.
It does. These behaviors, while seemingly contradictory or frustrating from an outside perspective, are perfectly logical outcomes for an individual whose early environment demanded constant adaptation, external validation, and navigating unpredictable emotional landscapes, rather than fostering internal motivation and consistent routine.
So the external chaos gets internalized.
Exactly. Reflected in these paradoxical task management styles, it's a highly intelligent, albeit sometimes challenging, way the brain learned to cope.
Okay, so beyond these cognitive and motivational patterns, the AOS also profoundly influences emotional and social dynamics.
Yes, this is a huge area.
We see things like emotional dysregulation, where emotions seem to have like no volume control, only an auto switch, 0 to 100 in an instant.
Yes, exactly. And that ties directly back to rejection-sensitive dysphoria, RSD, which we touched on earlier.
Right, the extreme sensitivity.
For someone with RSD, even a tiny criticism or perceived rejection causes physical pain as if I've been punched in the stomach. It's not just a feeling, it's a visceral, agonizing experience.
And that connects to the childhood.
Directly. The insidious childhood messaging of not good enough and the profound lack of togetherness or genuine mirroring directly fuel this intense sensitivity. This often leads to a deep, sometimes desperate desire for connection.
Which can manifest how?
As oversharing, the unfiltered sharing of deeply personal information very early in a relationship, often followed by intense regret or shame afterwards.
Ah, the vulnerability hangover.
Sight chuckle. Yes, that's a good term for it. The suppressed feelings from childhood also contribute to that on-off emotional response because subtle, nuanced emotional expression wasn't rewarded or even safe back then.
Right. Why bother modulating when your feelings were constantly ignored or invalidated?
Exactly. Then there's small talk phobia.
Hating small talk.
Yes, where low information chatter is often experienced as spam, something irritating to be avoided. There's a strong preference for deep, intense, existential topics that offer more significant intellectual and emotional engagement, and crucially, often a larger dopamine release.
Okay, so it's seeking stimulation.
In part, yes, and the problem vector analysis, or the fix-it reflex, is a fascinating one too.
The fix-it reflex.
When someone shares an emotional difficulty, instead of just passively listening and offering empathy, the system immediately switches to a diagnostic and troubleshooting mode. It generates an immediate solution plan.
So they jump straight to solving the problem.
Right. It's like their brain is always trying to fix the problem, not just witness or sit with the emotion.
Which could be frustrating for the person just wanting to vent.
It can be, definitely. For someone who grew up in an environment where problems were constantly presented to them, or where they were expected to mediate and solve parental conflicts, this fix-it reflex is a highly developed, if sometimes misplaced, skill.
And this ties in with other social strategies.
Yes, like the chameleon protocol or social mirroring, unconsciously synchronizing with the conversational partner's body language, word usage, speaking tempo.
Blending in.
It's an efficient way to reduce the social bandwidth demand, making social interactions smoother and less draining by unconsciously conforming. It's another adaptive strategy.
And that need for the acoustic bubble.
Right, that reliance on specific, often looping background noise music, podcasts, to drown out internal chaos and allow focus, especially on monotonous tasks. That directly relates to the brain's attempt to regulate itself amidst a torrent of internal and external stimuli.
So all these social and emotional anomalies.
They're entirely understandable outcomes of a childhood where genuine emotional expression, authentic connection, and a stable environment for self-regulation were consistently thwarted. They are learned survival strategies in a world that often didn't meet their core needs, leading to these sophisticated, if sometimes challenging, ways of relating.
Okay, so after all this, we're really talking about an operating system that's just full of inherent paradoxes.
Absolutely. Paradox is a great word for it.
The sources give us some truly illustrative examples of this AOS in action, like the lazy workaholic.
What?
The person who can procrastinate a simple 15-minute administrative task for weeks, maybe months. Yet in a single night, fueled by panic or passion, they can hyper-focus and write a brilliant 50-page report.
Classic example. Or the forgetful genius.
Okay.
The person who might completely blank on their own phone number or where they put their keys 2 minutes ago,
Chuckle's relatable.
but can recall obscure scientific facts or historical dates from years ago with perfect accuracy. The memory works differently.
Right. Then there's the lonely social butterfly.
Loves being around people, thrives in social settings, charismatic even,
What?
but then needs days of isolation afterwards to intensely recharge. The social interaction drains their battery significantly.
Okay. And the insensitive empath.
This one's tricky. Someone who deeply feels a friend's sadness possesses profound empathy on an internal level, but might unintentionally interrupt them mid-sentence because a new thought or potential solution has just burst into their mind and has to come out immediately without a filter. The intention isn't malicious, but the impact can feel insensitive.
Right. The impulse control.
And your favorite.
Yeah, the chaos-loving tidy person.
Yeah. Okay, explain that one. Their apartment might sometimes look like a battlefield, laundry piles, unfiled papers everywhere, general clutter.
Okay.
But if a single book is standing at the wrong angle on a bookshelf, or one picture frame is slightly askew, it causes this almost physical distress, and they won't rest until it's perfectly aligned. There's a specific kind of order they need amidst the chaos.
I think a lot of us can relate to that last one, maybe on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
But it really highlights the unique internal logic that's at play here. These paradoxes are just so striking.
They are. And they beautifully describe the individual's journey from that childhood navigating impossible parental demands and emotional chaos to an adult life where their brain operates in these highly specific, often counterintuitive ways.
And the crucial point is,
They highlight that these aren't flaws to be simply fixed. They are incredibly clever, albeit sometimes challenging, adaptations. They underscore the sheer resilience and the unique wiring of this anomalous operating system. It's a system built for survival in a complex environment, and recognizing its inherent logic, its own internal consistency, is the first step towards working with it, not constantly fighting against it. #V. Pathways to self-understanding and adulthood.
okay, this brings us to a really crucial and, I think, hopeful point. The pathways towards self-understanding and maybe a different kind of adulthood.
Yes, moving forward.
And the sources offer this powerful reframe that really challenges our traditional notions of maturity. It says adulthood isn't some fixed state, right? Not a destination you just arrive at.
Exactly. It's presented more as a continuous process, often even a role one temporarily wears, rather than some final identity you achieve.
That perspective feels incredibly liberating, especially for someone who is forced to grow up early, taking on adult responsibilities without the emotional scaffolding that most children get.
It really does. It directly challenges that internalized feeling of not good enough that often lingers from that kind of upbringing.
So what is true adulthood, then, in this context?
True adulthood, as the sources highlight, is the point when someone genuinely recognizes that no one else is coming to save you.
Okay, that sounds a bit bleak initially.
It can sound bleak, but it's actually meant to be empowering. Yet, despite this realization, it's about choosing, consciously choosing, to take responsibility for your life, to make order where there is chaos, to do what needs to be done.
Even when it's hard.
Especially when it's hard, not because they enjoy it, but because someone could do it and that someone is them. It fundamentally shifts the focus away from external validation, which was always lacking and unreliable in their childhood, towards internal agency and self-efficacy.
So it's about building from your own story.
Exactly. Not trying to fit some mold imposed by others or trying to finally win the approval that never came. The journey of development in this profound context is about adding something to yourself, not trying to eradicate perceived flaws.
Adding something. I like that. And the core part of that process involves deeply understanding what the sources call the inner architecture of the mind.
Yes, understanding your own blueprint.
It's described as a kind of shield that the vulnerable, childlike self constructed way back when to protect itself from that noisy and invalidating environment.
That's a perfect way to put it. The childhood experiences we discussed, the buzzing to drown out arguments, the inventing myself to exclude parents, the not mentioning burdens or difficulties, these are all prime examples of this shield being meticulously built piece by piece as a survival strategy.
And even things like boredom can have a deeper meaning.
Potentially, yes. The long-term state of boredom, for instance, isn't necessarily just a lack of external stimulation for someone with this AOS. It can actually be a sign of a deeper distrust towards the world, that you no longer believe something is truly worth your energy.
A learned skepticism.
Exactly, born from repeated invalidation or disappointment. So the journey now involves understanding and maybe even honoring this unique inner architecture rather than constantly fighting against it.
Learning to work with your brain's adaptive wiring.
Precisely, and ultimately re-engaging with the world on your own authentic terms. True presence in this context means being in a state where you don't have to constantly compress, filter, or explain yourself for others to understand or accept you.
That sounds like freedom.
It is, and that fundamental shift from feeling not good enough to understanding that self-improvement is about adding something to your unique self rather than attempting to eradicate perceived flaws. That is absolutely crucial for healing and building a meaningful self-directed life.
So how does one actually do this? How do you begin to work with this complex inner architecture? Popper Peter, from the sources, offers some really practical and timeless tools for self-observation and control that seem particularly relevant here.
Yes, his insights are very grounded.
It all starts with that ancient wisdom, know thyself.
Indeed, know thyself, or in Greek, nothisotin, is the cornerstone. Popper Peter argues that this profound self-knowledge is the pathway to understanding one's own destiny, a destiny that is shaped not by fate, but by our character and personality.
Okay. And he offers techniques.
Specific, actionable techniques for developing self-observation, enhancing memory, cultivating emotional balance. One particularly powerful tool is daily self-reflection, practiced just before falling asleep.
Like reviewing the day.
Exactly. The exercise involves mentally retelling the day like a film, watching it unfold, maybe even in reverse, perhaps 3 or 4 times. The goal isn't to judge yourself harshly,
Right.
but to become a spectator of the day's events and yourself within them, observing yourself like a stranger, this giraffe neck perspective, as he calls it. Observing oneself from an objective, detached viewpoint can be incredibly powerful for someone used to internal chaos. It helps create distance from overwhelming emotions and knee-jerk patterns.
And it's not about suppressing emotions, is it? That seems important given the childhood suppression.
Absolutely key distinction. The goal isn't to reduce emotional intensity or to deny your feelings, not at all. Instead, the aim is for the expression of emotions to become a tool of intentional communication.
Okay, explain that.
You learn to experience the emotion deeply internally, acknowledge it, understand it, but then you choose how you convey it externally, ensuring your outward expression aligns with your true intention and the needs of the situation rather than being just an uncontrolled reaction.
So you gain mastery over the expression, not the feeling itself.
Precisely. This skill is vital for achieving accurate self-presentation and fostering more harmonious relationships, especially when your default setting might have been that on-off emotional dysregulation.
What other practices does he suggest?
Other practices Popper Peter advocates include actively seeking positive aspects even in negative events, not toxic positivity, but balanced perspective, consciously challenging ingrained prejudices or assumptions, and importantly, creating order in one's external environment.
Cleaning your room actually helps your mind.
He strongly believes so. He powerfully emphasizes that if we create order within ourselves, we will find solutions even in our most difficult situations. And creating external order can be a pathway to internal order. These are concrete, daily methods for our listener to apply the insights gained about their childhood and AOS, translating internal chaos into conscious, deliberate action and self-mastery.
Okay, that's empowering. Finally, for anyone whose childhood was shaped by these narcissistic dynamics, navigating current relationships, whether it's still with those family members or with new connections, can be incredibly challenging. Those old patterns tend to repeat or get triggered.
It's a major hurdle, yes. Those dynamics are deeply ingrained.
The sources provide crucial strategies for setting boundaries and protecting oneself from re-experiencing that invalidation or manipulation.
Absolutely essential tools for self-preservation. When dealing with narcissistic individuals, whether they are lingering family members or new people who exhibit similar traits, strategies like the gray rock method are often recommended.
Gray rock, like being boring.
Essentially, yes. This involves making your communication consistently boring, factual, and emotionally flat. The goal is to cut off the narcissist's emotional supply, the attention, the drama, the reactions they crave and feed off.
So you don't give them anything to latch on to.
Exactly. And crucially, you must avoid J.
J.
Justify, argue, defend, explain. Narcissists thrive on these reactions. They pull you into their dysfunctional dynamic, their frame, where you can't win, so you refuse to play.
Okay. Avoid JE. What else?
The sources also strongly recommend BF responses, especially useful in written communication like emails or texts.
BIF. What's that stand for?
Brief, informative, friendly, and firm.
Brief, informative, friendly, firm.
Okay. It helps maintain clarity, enforce boundaries, state your position without escalating things, and prevent those endless draining arguments. It keeps the communication contained and factual.
And then there's empathic confrontation. That sounds delicate.
Yeah.
Especially when dealing with someone who might lack empathy themselves.
It is delicate, and it requires practice and very clear intent. Empathic confrontation, as described by experts like Wendy Beharry, involves validating the other person's feelings. You might say, I can see you're frustrated right now.
Okay. Acknowledging their emotion.
Yes. While simultaneously and firmly naming their unacceptable behavior, however, yelling at me is not okay. And then you set a clear boundary. If you continue to yell, I will end this conversation.
So you separate the person from the behavior.
Exactly. You acknowledge their internal state, but hold the line on how they treat you. For co-parenting situations, which can be incredibly contentious with narcissistic ex-partners,
Oh, I bet.
parallel parenting is strongly suggested. This minimizes direct interactions between the high-conflict parents and establishes strict separation between the two households, usually based on a detailed, legally binding parenting agreement.
Reducing opportunities for manipulation.
Precisely. These practical strategies directly address the kind of manipulative and draining interactions described in the childhood narrative. The constant demands for accountability, the emotional blackmail. They empower the individual to protect themselves in similar adult relationships, providing actionable tools to manage the lingering effects of that early environment and build healthier, more self-protective dynamics moving forward. Hashtags tag outro.
Wow. We have truly taken a profound deep dive today, haven't we?
We really covered a lot of ground. It's dense material.
Yeah. From understanding the specific, often harrowing nuances of a childhood shaped by narcissistic parents, those impossible choices, the insidious hidden conflicts, the premature responsibilities thrust upon a child, to recognizing the incredible, albeit complex, adaptive capabilities of the human brain that lead to what we've called this unique, anomalous operating system.
Indeed. We've explored how seemingly disparate experiences, things like emotional dysregulation, intense hyperfocus, that pervasive feeling of imposter syndrome, even decision paralysis, are all intricately interconnected.
Right. They're not random flaws.
Not at all. They stem directly from the very strategies developed for survival and that deep, unmet longing for genuine connection in a childhood that was often devoid of it. It's really a powerful testament to the human spirit's profound ability to adapt and endure.
And the most powerful takeaway from all this, for me at least,
What stands out for you?
it's not about trying to fix something broken within you. Because fundamentally, nothing is broken.
That's absolutely essential.
It's about understanding and ultimately embracing this unique way of being in the world and building on its inherent strengths, the creativity, the sensitivity, the resilience.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility, not for the past you endured, because that was absolutely not your fault, but for how you choose to live now, in this present moment, using these profound insights to build a life of authentic connection, purpose, and radical self-acceptance.
So as you, our listener, reflect on everything we discussed today, maybe ask yourself this question.
What small, courageous act can you take today to lean into and embrace a part of your own anomalous operating system? How can you begin to reframe what might have once felt like a vulnerability and instead see it as a unique strength, not just for yourself, but in how you courageously engage with the world around you?